Hello BookTube. Today on my 2023 library tour, I am continuing with the history wall. Given that a number of the books on the next few shelves are ones that I haven't read yet, I'm going to try to see if I can finish this particular bookcase off today. I have 3 shelves to go, so let's see how long it can take me. My goal is maybe about 30 minutes at most, so anyway. So, starting off with The Last King of America, The Misunderstood Reign of George III by Andrew Roberts. Now, this is a biography of George III that I haven't gotten around to yet. But there is a BookTube event in April that might be a great time to read that biography. Another biography that I have not read yet is Traitor to His Class, The Privileged Life and Radical Presidency of Franklin Delano Roosevelt by H.W. Brands. To repeat, a biography I have not read yet. This is Grant by Ron Chernow, which again I have not read yet. Stepping away from biography for a little bit, this is Nixonland, The Rise of a President and the Fracturing of America by Rick Perlstein. Again, I haven't read it. So, getting to a book that I have read, this is The Proud Tower, A Portrait of the World Before the War, 1890 to 1914 by Barbara W. Tuchman. I read this about 10 or so years ago and quite enjoyed it, although the stills may be a bit dated. Next is El Norte, The Epic and Forgotten Story of Hispanic North America by Carrie Gibson. She also wrote Empire's Crossroads, which I had to go at early last year and didn't quite get on with, but I do want to give this one a go at some point and Bail Redeem Empire's Crossroads. Next is a book that I have read. This is The Horde, How the Mongols Changed the World by Marie Favreau. This is a history of the Golden Horde, one of the constituent parts of the larger Mongol Empire. This book was a finalist for the 2021 Kondo Prize, and I read this one, really enjoyed it, and then decided to kind of give the Kondo History Prize a closer look. But anyway, but this is a fantastic book. I love this book. All 3 finalists for the 2021 Kondo Prize were great. Next is another biography that I have not gotten around to yet. It's a 2-volume one, and it's a biography of him. This is Hitler, Volume 1, Ascent, 1889 to 1939 by Volker Ulrich. And the translator is Jefferson Chase. And I have the second volume, Hitler, Downfall, 1939 to 1945, also by Volker Ulrich, obviously. And I'm pretty sure Jefferson Chase should be the translator. Yes, he is. Moving on from him, this is Voodoo and Power, The Politics of Religion in New Orleans, 1881 to 1940 by Cody A. Roberts. Now we have a book that I have bailed on, Southern Decadence in New Orleans, Howard Philip Smith and Frank Perez. I didn't particularly care for it. I probably will give it a bail redemption, though. This is another biography I have yet to read. Empress Dowager Cixi, The Concubine Who Launched Modern China by Zhong Chang. Next is A Royal Experiment, The Private Life of King George III by Janice Hadlow. This is Nicholas and Alexandra, the classic account of the fall of the Romanov dynasty by Robert K. Massey, which I picked up for my birthday last year. And of course, forgot the fact that I'd already ordered a copy about the day before, but anyway. Sticking with the fall of the Romanovs, this is after the Romanovs, Russian exiles in Paris from the Belle Epoque through Revolution and War by Helen Rappaport. Lovely cover. And the last book on this shelf is Indivisible, Daniel Webster and the Birth of American Nationalism by Joel Richard Paul. Moving on to the next shelf. And hopefully when I get to the third shelf, I will not have to sit down on the floor because that was not very pleasant when I did it on the other bookcase on Tuesday, I think. Anyway, so starting this penultimate shelf on this bookcase, this is a biography I have not read yet. A biography of Napoleon III, the Shadow Emperor, by Alan Strauss Schaum. Next is Empire of Guns, The Violent Making of the Industrial Revolution by Priya Satia. Unfabling the East, The Enlightenment's Encounter with Asia by Jürgen Osterhammel. Translated by Robert Savage, who I do believe I've read a book translated by him before. And we'll get to that in about a few books. Next is The Heartland in American History by Kristen L. Hogginson. And then we get to the first book on this particular shelf that I have read. This is The Queen by Matthew Dennison. This is a biography of Queen Elizabeth II that is largely pretty good, but once it gets later in her reign, particularly into like the 80s and 90s, Dennison starts to become a bit more of a tabloid writer rather than a biographer, and that annoyed me immensely. But I'm hoping to get maybe a few more biographies of Elizabeth at some point. Next is a big biography that I have read and really enjoyed. Maria Theresa, the Habsburg Empress in Her Time by Barbara Stolberg-Brillinger and translated by Robert Savage. So yeah, this is a magnificent biography of Maria Theresa. I loved it. I read it last year for March at the Mammoths and really enjoyed it. It was magnificent. Next is The Wind from the East, French Intellectuals, the Cultural Revolution, and the Legacy of the 1960s by Richard Rowland. Next is a book that I have unfinished business with, and that is Legacy of Violence, A History of the British Empire by Carolyn Elkins. I really need to have another go at this book. Not sure when, but next is a book that I'm not entirely sure I will have unfinished business with. The Everlasting Empire, The Political Culture of Ancient China and Its Imperial Legacy by Yuri Pines. Next is Emergency Chronicles, Indira Gandhi and Democracy's Turning Point by Gyan Prakash. This is Europe since 1989, A History by Philip Thur. Let me see if it is, yes, translated by Charlotte Hughes Kreutzmuller. Next is Preventing Palestine, A Political History from Camp David to Oslo by Seth Anziska. Okay, so the next books on this shelf I have had some experience with, one of which I have an unfinished business with. First up is for Making the Arab World, Nasser Qutb and the Clash That Shaped the Middle East by Fawaz A. Gurgis. This is a fantastic book. I really enjoyed this look at Egypt in like mid 20th century Egypt. It is very fascinating. I really enjoyed it. I also enjoyed, after a significant struggle, Waterloo Sunrise, London from the 60s to Thatcher by John Davis. This is a very interesting look at London in the 60s and 70s, sort of the commercial, food culture, housing, politics. It's fascinating, but a bit dense and definitely academic. And I initially bailed on it and then came back to it and gave it a bit of a slower read, and that definitely helped in that case. Ooh. I also enjoyed In Hitler's Munich, Jews, the Revolution, and the Rise of Nazism by Michael Brenner, translated by Jeremiah Reamer. Now, this is a pretty good, very good book too, on Munich. Now, the book that I have some unfinished business with is The Road to Dien Bien Phu, History of the First War for Vietnam by Christopher Gosha. This is a history of basically the Vietnamese War of Independence from France. I read it and had a bail redemption attempt on it. I didn't quite make it, but I do hope after some time has passed that I will have a successful bail redemption of this book. But it is fairly academic, though. And the last book on this shelf is Persians, The Age of the Great Kings by Lloyd Llewellyn Jones. So this is a history of the Persians that, for the most part, I enjoyed, but there comes a point late in the book where there are Greek sources for a particular batch of Persian history, and the history is depicted in all of basically a soap opera, and it doesn't really match the rest of the book, and it annoyed me to no end. Absolutely no end. Okay, moving on to the last shelf, and hopefully I can do this while sitting in a chair. Okay, this might be a bit of a struggle. Okay, so first up is another book by Jürgen Osterhammel, The Transformation of the World, A Global History of the 19th Century, translated by, is it Robert Savage? Will you tell me? Oh no, this is translated by Patrick Camiller. Next is a book that I want to have another go at. This is The Global Age, Europe 1950 to 2017 by Ian Kershaw. So I dipped into it, I think, shortly after it first came out, and wanted it in my collection because I do have an interest in more contemporary history, particularly more contemporary European history. And I think, okay, so next, I have these books packed in. This is Outside the Gates of Eden, The Dream of America from Hiroshima to Now by Peter Bacon Hales. The next book is one that I have read. It is Unsettled Land, From Revolution to Republic, The Struggle for Texas by Sam W. Haynes. This is a pretty good book that looks at American colonization of Texas, the Texas Rebellion from Mexico, the years of the Texas Republic, Texas's annexation to the United States, and the subsequent Mexican-American War. Next is Between Mao and McCarthy, Chinese-American Politics in the Cold War Years by Charlotte Brooks. Next is a book that I have some unfinished business with, A Very Queer Family Indeed, Sex, Religion, and the Bensons in Victorian Britain by Simon Goldhill. This is basically a family biography of whom most members were not straight. I think maybe only the father was. Next is Newsprint Metropolis, City Papers and the Making of Modern Americans by Julia Guarneri. Oscar Wilde Prefigured, Queer Fashioning and British Caricature, 1715 and 1900 by Dominic Janes. This is a fantastic book, Aftermath, Life in the Fallout of the Third Reich, 1945 to 1955 by Harold Yonner, translated by Sean Whiteside. This is fantastic. I really enjoyed this book immensely. But it is complicated and interestingly stylized. But great book. The only thing about this this final shelf on this bookcase is that there's a weird sting, which I don't quite know why it's there. But I sometimes wonder if maybe the bookcase was put together wrong or something. Anyway. Okay, this is American Girls in Red Russia, Chasing the Soviet Dream by Julia L. Mickenberg. This is The Polarizers, Post-War Architects of Our Partisan Era by Sam Rosenfeld. Ooh. Yikes. I need to clean these off. Okay, this is We Have Not a Government, The Articles of Confederation and the Road to the Constitution by George William Van Cleve. This is Dreadnought, Britain, Germany, and the Coming of the Great War by Robert K. Massey. I have a number of Robert K. Massey books that I really need to get to. This is Darkness Falling, The Strange Death of the Weimar Republic, 1930 to 1933 by Peter Walther. Let's see if it is, yes, translated from the German by Peter Lewis. I'm thinking I'm probably going to have a shelf of translated German histories. Or I guess German and Austrian histories. Or histories translated from the German. This will work. This is Kingdom of Characters, The Language of Revolution That Made China Modern by Jing Su. I'm thinking this is not translated, though. No, it's not translated. This is Tudor England by John Guy. Western Europe's Democratic Age, 1945 to 1968 by Martin Conway. This is Lost Paradise, The Story of Grenada by Elizabeth Drayson, which I'm pretty sure is not translated. Oh yeah, you can get a better look at it. And only 2 more books. This one here I have read before. It was for the 2022 Kindle History Prize. This was one of the shortlisted books. This is In the Forest of No Joy, The Congo-Ocean Railroad and the Tragedy of French Colonialism by J.P. Doughton. So this is a history of the construction of the Congo-Ocean Railway and French colonial power in what is now the Republic of the Congo. And it's harrowing. It was a harrowing read. A bit academic, though. And finally, the last book on this bookcase. This is You Never Forget Your First, a biography of George Washington by Alexis Coe. I picked this up for my birthday. I had a choice between this and Ron Chernow's Washington, and I decided to go with this one. Yeah, I may not be able to get it back in. So, that concludes this bookcase. There's one bookcase left, which may take probably about 2 days. I'm thinking I could do like the first 2 shelves Monday and then the last 3 on Tuesday if I have time. Although some of them I have read, like the second shelf. Well, yeah, I've read about 2 books on the first shelf, a few books on the second shelf, 1 on the third. I've dipped into 2. So I've read 2, dipped into 2 on the, no, it's more than that on the 4th. And then the 5th, there's been 4. So anyway, so I'm thinking I should finish it off by Tuesday, I think. If I decide to double up, I continue doubling up on these shelves. Because it didn't really take me a whole lot of time. So I might do that. So later this evening, I will be up with weekly reads. So to recap, my reading plans did not quite turn out how I'd hoped, but it's not that bad. I mean, but I'm kind of happy that it did because, excuse me, I did read some fantastic manga this past week. So anyway, BookTube, until I see you later this evening with weekly reads, have a great afternoon and stay safe.